Hey guys, Michael here from the 4.0 to Pro podcast. Our show focuses on a single shot or strategy every single episode. We are on every single podcast platform. We are not a video podcast. We are not on YouTube, but we love doing these breakdown videos for you. If you'd like to subscribe to the show, links are in the description. And we'd love to see you over there.
This was an amazing point. It made the rounds on social media the last few days. It came from the MLP Super Finals last weekend, featuring the Chicago Slice players, Eric Lange and Lacey Schneeman, versus the DC Pickleball squad with Riley Newman and Jade Kawamoto. Amazing point, lots of fireworks, lots of things, as Michael said, that we've gone over in this show. There were some strong comments. I'm going to suggest that they weren't from you guys. I'm going to say players of either lower rating or less experience, criticizing Eric, who is 6'4", taking up too much of the court and too many balls that Lacey should have played. So some of this will be a commentary on pro mixed doubles, and I'll share my thoughts on that, but also lots of other strategic and mechanical execution things that we think you guys will enjoy our discussing. The first area that I want to comment on is Lacey's decision, and let's call it Lacey and Eric's decision, to return to Riley. Riley's got one of the best drop shots in the game, so, we might want to discuss that quickly. I've said on this show over and over again that a return of serve strategy is to perhaps consider which of the two players is more impactful or concerning on their fifth shot. And between Riley and Jade, that's clearly Riley. But if you take a look at Riley's drop shot, which softly lands in the kitchen like most of his do, he also attacks following his drop shot very fast. So it's pretty hard to keep Riley back. Good play from Lacey to return to Riley. I'm good with that. Maybe a little bit deeper would have been good. But that's why I feel they returned to Riley, not Jade, in this situation.
Riley does such a good job recognizing that his drop is a good one. And man, he is from the baseline to the kitchen line in a split second, because he realizes that the people on the other side of the net can really only hit up on that ball, or they have to do what you would call a surrender dink and just allow Riley's team to get to the line basically uncontested because the drop was so good.
Totally agree. The next few shots as we roll forward, they're just feeling each other out at the kitchen line. And I feel like Jade gets a ball up a little bit to Eric. Again, he's 6'4". If you and I are standing there, that ball's probably going to bounce. But, Eric's got great reach. And as we've talked about on this show, he leans in and starts to use just this amazing backhand flick that when I had a chance to drill with him last summer, I didn't think it was that powerful, but it's really a fantastic shot. And what I was impressed with is I find this to be his instigator. This is where he starts the fireworks. He doesn't overhit the shot. I'm questioning whether or not he may have forgotten that Jade was left-handed with a terrific backhand. He goes what should be to a great spot on an opponent directly in front of you, the right hip. But Jade's sitting on that backhand. So perhaps he forgot. When I'm playing against a lefty, I'm a little more conservative with my speed ups because I can't rely on instinct as much, and frequently I need to be reminded by that lefty, and that's not a good thing.
And she really turns and fires on it. It did not take but a split second. The ball was a little bit up, and he fired it right at her, maybe like right shoulder-ish, and she just turned around and fired, and all of a sudden there they are.
There's really some fantastic defense from Riley and Jade. Foreshadowing here a little bit about our opinion of how pro mixed doubles should be played. Take a look at where Riley is during this defensive exchange. He's straddling the center line. He's 6'2". We're going to see a ton of fantastic split steps from Riley, remarkably well-timed with the ball being on either Eric or Lacey's paddle. His springs are loaded. He's ready to react. He's practically playing singles there, and that's a great defensive strategy. Jade is back a little bit, taking advantage of a little extra time to make some great defensive plays. So as we said, these are two of the best defensive players in the game. And right now they're kind of holding their own at the non-volley zone, but that may not hold up. We'll see how that goes.
Just before we recorded this show, Scott, I was on court with a beginner player. Shout out to Natasha. And we talked about, of course, stable base and split step. And I actually brought this video up and I said, look at the guy in the white closest to us. There's not a single shot in this entire rally, whether he's being hit to or not, that he doesn't split step. She's like, oh my God, you're right. He's wider than shoulder width, and he really has this beautifully stable base. He gets very low and split step literally every single time the ball gets struck, whether he's the one striking it or anybody else on the court is.
And these guys needed to play some awesome D. As I mentioned, Eric hits a couple of just gorgeous backhand flicks. I feel like playing alongside Ben Johns has been super helpful for Eric. His technique here is more wristy than Ben. Ben uses a little bit more of the shoulder joint and only adds a little bit of wrist, but that goes to his table tennis background. Eric, coming from a high-level tennis background, he's just reaching in, using his height and extension, and really hitting the ball beautifully at Riley and Jade's feet, and they just played some great D, thanks to split stepping, stable base, and getting that paddle down and playing some of that volleyball defense.
Eric really gets a hold of some of these balls, and Riley has hung on as long as he can, as close to the kitchen as he can. They are back to being split left-right on the court. Jade is a little bit further back than Riley is because she's sort of in that cross-court crossfire. So if Eric gets a hold of a ball and hits it cross-court down at her feet, she wanted a little bit more time to react to it. Whereas him going inside out on Riley would be a bit of a tougher shot. So I think that's probably why Riley felt confident enough to stay up there. But after like 2 or 3 balls that are kind of floaters to Eric, both of them, Jade and Riley, say, all right, we've got to batten down the hatches and get into full defensive mode now. Their paddles are down, pointing towards the bottom like we're digging a volleyball out. That's the position they're both in. And they're both super stable. They're split stepping, and they're ready to go in any direction as Eric is just firing these howitzer shots at them.
I feel like the first overhead that Eric had before Jade was able to get back into that defensive position that you described, that was a chance to end the rally. He hits a little bit too far down and gets that ball to bounce up around Jade's waist. That's going to be a winner against just about everybody else in the world. But Jade's able to make the defensive play. We talk often about hit the ball at their feet wherever the heck their feet are, including an overhead. So sometimes, especially when we come from a tennis background, we hit down and the plastic ball, just the energy just gets absorbed into the court, and it's not that difficult of a return. So I think if he had that one to do over again, hitting at Jade's feet, that might have ended the rally there. But they made some incredible gets, incredible D. They got themselves established at the baseline, and then it gets more difficult to put the ball away.
In response to it, she doesn't drop the ball. She kind of fires it back at him versus trying to drop it. And I'm curious what your take is on that. She fires it really right back to his upper right-hand shoulder so he can really get a hold of it again. She's probably just doing her best just to get a paddle on it because he just hit it at 1 billion miles an hour. But I'm curious if had you been able to analyze it and slow it down in situ, would you have made a different strategic choice than she did, or is it just impossible at that point? You're just trying to hang on for dear life.
At this point, both Jade and Riley are prioritizing a ball that bounces in the dark gray part of the court. I mean, everything they're doing now is we've got to get that ball to bounce in front of them. But on this shot, Jade is like, look, I've just got to make them hit another ball. I'm not yet ready to drop. But gradually, they do a pretty good job of getting that ball down. And then Eric and Lacey are gonna keep their feet on the gas as much as they can. But sure, it'd be great to drop the ball in the kitchen, but just getting the ball back at that point was probably the best thing she could do.
Well, it's worth noting that the moment that ball struck her backhand, so Eric just ripped it. She got a hold of it. She put it really back right to his right shoulder so he could hit another one. But by the time he hits that next ball, she is behind the baseline and she's balanced and she's in full defensive position. So that happened in about 1 second. She hit the backhand and she hustled behind the baseline. Now there's a lot more time to at least make a split-second decision and, again, try to make their way back up to the non-volley zone or the kitchen.
And they've done a great job of countering the advice that I just gave is while they're still inside the baseline, Eric can hit the ball at their feet. But now that they're behind the baseline, that's no longer an option. So they can get a ball to bounce up a little bit and give themselves a decent chance of playing some defense. Eric gets a crack at a handful more overheads and had a couple of chances to angle the ball off the court. This could be another case where he feels like the middle is going to be a great place to go. But again, we've got a righty and a lefty. with their forehands in the middle. They're really fast. Their anticipation is great. And I think if we had to do this one over again, Eric may have said, angle the overhead off the court, hit a drop, something, because Jade and Riley were going to just keep getting the ball back and making them hit.
At one point, Jade gets a really nice drop that makes him stretch, and he hits a bit of an inside-out shot that forces Riley then to go to Lacey. So now Lacey's involved, and she fires a deep backhand ball on Riley's side, which is a much tougher ball to deal with. Obviously, the weaker side generally is the backhand for a lot of people. And she gets a nice deep down the line backhand ball that Riley really has to scramble for. In fact, it's off screen on the video.
It's a little bit of foreshadowing as we get ready to talk about mixed doubles strategy here a little bit, is that Lacey's got a ton of power herself. Credit to Jade for getting a ball over to Lacey, but she is very capable of ending the rally and almost did so in that particular instance. Riley and Jade are trying to drop the ball in the kitchen. They're also trying to keep the ball away from Eric. Of the two opponents, Eric has the ability to put the ball away a little bit better, and we'll just kind of leave that there, and we'll circle back to it with my comments on mixed double strategy here.
You'll see that Lacey has hit this deep backhand ball. Riley has fished it out, and now Eric has gone back to the well and is firing another ball to that backhand corner from an overhead. Well, Riley is, what do you think, 6-7 feet behind the baseline when he hits that overhead? Like, there's plenty of time for him to figure out where he's going to go with the ball. Jade is not even on screen. Would that have been a time to go back into the middle? Maybe, but as you have stated a number of times on the show, you start getting into angles on this tiny court, and the ball finds its way to the left and right of those lines more than we would like. So when you're in the middle of this sort of heated overhead thing, yeah, you want to get an angle on the ball, but there's so many factors. There's wind, and there's a bunch of stuff that can make that all go wrong. So he's taking the safe play by continuing to fire it down the middle. Some of those angles can be really tough, and a lot of times people that go for them end up hitting it wide. So I think that's partially why he doesn't angle it a whole bunch. Plus, he's got two wickedly fast people on the other side of the court. So Riley, off court, that's 6 feet back, fires it back to Eric, who then ends up hitting it back to Jade, who puts kind of a high drop right to Lacey on the right-hand side of their side of the court. And this is where all of the conversation on a lot of these videos ends up, because they see the male player really stepping in front of the female player to take some of these balls. And that's where people are like, he's a ball hog, he should have stayed on his side, etc., etc. This one has a little bit more nuance to it. So why don't you guide us through that a little bit?
Sure. I mean, it's been a super exciting point thus far. And I'm going to say that every ball that went up that required an overhead, except for one, is if I'm on the Eric and Lacey side, we want Eric to take that ball. It's only 20 feet of width of court. Eric comes from very high-level tennis, is 6'4", has got a howitzer for a right arm. If he can step into that overhead, we want him to take that ball right up till this last one here. This one goes over to Lacey's side, and I want to tip my hat to Eric, and I've chatted with him about this, and he basically says, all of the previous balls, I need to use my length and get involved and intimidate, but for that very last one, he says, I kind of forgot who I was playing with. Lacey's got a ton of power. She definitely should have taken that ball. I definitely should not have taken that ball. And then he credits her after the point of staying super positive and coming over to his side and, hey, no worries, let's bounce back. And they do. They go on to win this very impressive match. So that's great teamwork, and credit to Eric for playing a great rally, but then realizing that last one would have been a better ball for Lacey to take.